Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the world of OERs, Open Educational Resources
Right.
for Physics Education.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're looking at this 2017 workshop
Right.
held in Singapore for physics teachers.
Interesting.
They were learning to use some really interesting tools like tracker video analysis software
Wow. Yeah, I've heard of Tracker.
and open source physics simulations, or OSP.
Oh, very cool.
And these are both completely free, which is amazing.
That's incredible, especially for teachers who might not have a lot of resources.
Exactly, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, right? Making physics education more accessible and engaging.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think about the tools that I wish I had when I was first learning physics,
Right,
these would have been game changers.
I bet. So tell me more about this workshop in Singapore. What was their main goal?
So the workshop was really focused on introducing teachers to using Tracker and OSP,
Yep.
specifically for teaching dynamics.
Gotcha.
It's a pretty complex topic.
Yeah, forces, motion, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And these tools can really help bring those concepts to life.
That makes sense. It sounds very hands-on.
It was. The teachers got to actually try out the software, analyze videos, build dynamic models.
That's great. So it wasn't just sitting around listening to lectures.
Nope, it was very interactive.
So let's talk about Tracker for a second. What kind of real-world examples did they use to demonstrate how it works?
They looked at a bunch of cool scenarios like analyzing the physics of a falling object.
Okay, that's classic physics.
Right. And they also used Tracker to figure out the forces in an Atwood machine.
An Atwood machine, now, just to be sure I'm with you,
Sure.
that's that experiment with the weights and the pulleys and the string, right?
You got it. It's used to demonstrate things like tension and acceleration.
Right, so how does Tracker even work with that?
So imagine you're a teacher. You want to show your students how this machine works.
Okay.
You could film the experiment with, pretty much anything these days.
Sure.
Then you upload the video to Tracker, and it breaks down the motion frame by frame. And from there, you can calculate all sorts of things, like the forces involved.
That sounds really powerful. Did they need, like, special lab equipment to record the video?
Actually, one of the coolest things I noticed is they emphasized using everyday resources. Like teachers could even use their smartphones to film the experiments.
Oh, wow. So you don't need a big budget for this.
Exactly. And they even provided links to videos and resources from the Singapore Tracker Digital Library.
So teachers could basically jump right in.
Exactly. It's all about making physics accessible.
I love that. Now, what about OSP? How did they use the simulations in the workshop?
OSP is fantastic for those more abstract ideas that can be hard to grasp.
Okay, listen, give me an example.
Well, let's say you're trying to teach about projectile motion.
Like throwing a ball or something.
Exactly. With OSP, you can create a simulation that visualizes the forces acting on the projectile.
Oh, wow.
You can change the angle of the launch, the initial velocity, all sorts of things.
So students can actually see how those changes affect the trajectory.
Exactly, and it's the same with the Atwood machine. You can adjust the masses and see how it impacts the acceleration.
So cool. Did they connect those simulations to the hands-on activities with Tracker?
Yeah, absolutely. They provided specific OSP simulations that built on the same topics.
Okay, so it was a very integrated approach.
They really wanted teachers to see how they could use these tools together.
This is all sounding fantastic, but I'm wondering, did they address the challenges that teachers might face in using these tools?
That's a great question. And yeah, they recognize that teachers often face barriers like limited time and resources.
Sure, and maybe even some hesitation about using new technology.
Definitely. And that's something they really tried to tackle in this workshop.
Okay, well, I'm curious to hear more about that.
Me too. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2.
Sounds good. I can't wait. So we left off talking about the challenges teachers might face in bringing this kind of tech into the classroom.
Right, like time resources, maybe even just feeling comfortable with the technology.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like this workshop in Singapore was really thoughtful about addressing those concerns.
They even had a guest speaker,
Oh, really?
Ezzy Chan, who had already successfully integrated this type of technology into her teaching.
That's so smart.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that was really helpful for the teachers.
Absolutely. I mean, who better to learn from than someone who's been there and done that?
For sure. Did they talk about what specific challenges Ezzy had faced?
The workshop materials don't go into detail about her presentation,
Okay.
but one thing that really stands out is this emphasis on community and collaboration.
No trust.
Like throughout the workshop, they encourage the teachers to connect with each other, share their experiences, and learn from one another.
That makes so much sense because when you're trying something new,
Yeah,
it can be really helpful to have that support system.
absolutely. And they even took it a step further.
Oh, how so?
They created a WhatsApp group for ongoing professional discussion.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So even after the workshop ended, the teachers could stay connected and keep learning from each other.
Exactly. They could share ideas, troubleshoot problems, and support each other as they started using Tracker and OSP in their own classrooms.
So it's like a built-in community of practice.
I love that idea.
Me too. Okay, so it sounds like they really thought about the long-term support for these teachers.
Definitely, they wanted to make sure the teachers felt empowered to actually use these tools.
That's so important. Did they get any feedback from the teachers after the workshop? Like, did they ask how useful it was?
They did. They conducted a survey to gauge the effectiveness of the workshop and get the teachers' overall impressions.
I'm dying to know what they said.
Well, get ready to be impressed because the feedback was overwhelmingly positive.
That's fantastic.
The teachers found the workshop incredibly useful and valuable.
That's so encouraging to hear.
Many of them expressed excitement about using what they'd learned in their own classrooms.
Like, specifically, what were they saying?
One teacher mentioned that the workshop opened a new way to engage students and make them think.
I love that.
Another one highlighted the practicality and ready resources provided by the workshop.
That's so key, right? You can learn about all this amazing technology,
Right.
but if you don't have the resources or the support to actually use it.
It's not very helpful.
Exactly. Did they have any suggestions for improvement?
They did. Some teachers felt that the pace could be adjusted, and some mentioned that having clearer instructions in certain areas would be helpful.
Okay, so even though they loved the workshop,
Yeah.
they still had some constructive criticism.
Exactly. And that kind of feedback is so valuable because it helps make the workshop even better for future participants.
For sure, it shows that the teachers were really engaged and thinking critically about the whole experience.
Absolutely. They weren't just passively absorbing information, they were actively contributing to the learning process.
It's amazing to see how much thought and care went into designing this workshop.
I agree, and it really highlights the power of open educational resources and collaborative learning.
You know, we've talked a lot about the workshop itself.
We have
But what are the big takeaways here? Like, what do you think is most important for our listeners to understand?
For me, the biggest takeaway is how this workshop demonstrates the power of democratizing knowledge and empowering both teachers and students.
I love that by giving people access to these amazing free tools like Tracker and OSP,
Right.
and by fostering a supportive community,
Yeah.
this workshop really opened up new possibilities for physics education.
Exactly. It's a beautiful example of how technology, combined with the strong sense of community, can transform education.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And let's not forget the teachers themselves.
Oh, yeah, they were so eager to learn and explore new approaches.
Exactly. Their enthusiasm was contagious.
It really was.
Well, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive into open educational resources for physics in Singapore.
We have.
But we're not quite done yet in part 3. We'll wrap things up with some final thoughts and a challenge for our listener. You know, it's been fascinating to see how these free tools, Tracker and OSP simulations, can really open up a whole new way of learning physics.
Right. It's not just about the tech itself, though, right?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, remember how the workshop materials emphasized responsible and quality learning?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It seems like they were really focused on helping teachers develop those skills in their students, too.
Okay, so it's not just about giving students cool new tools.
Right.
It's also about teaching them how to use those tools responsibly and effectively.
Exactly. They talked about creating responsible digital learners.
I like that phrase, but what does that actually look like in a physics classroom?
Well, imagine you're using Tracker to analyze a video of, let's say, a skateboarder doing a trick.
Okay, I can picture that.
Instead of just focusing on the cool visuals, you could ask students to think critically about the physics involved.
Like what kind of questions?
You could ask, what forces are at play here?
Hmm.
Or, how does the skateboarder's center of gravity shift during the trick?
Oh, that's good.
Or even, can you use Tracker to calculate the skateboarder's speed or acceleration?
I see. So it's about taking something the students are already interested in
Yeah.
and using these tools to really investigate and understand the physics behind it.
Exactly. It's about going beyond just memorizing formulas and really engaging with the concepts.
I love it. So how can our listener apply this to their own life? Like
Right.
maybe they're interested in physics, but don't know where to start.
Well, the great thing is you don't need a fancy lab or expensive equipment to explore these ideas.
That's true.
You can find tons of videos online and analyze them with Tracker.
Or even film your own experiments.
Right. And with OSP, you can run virtual experiments and manipulate different variables.
It's like having a physics lab in your pocket.
Exactly. And you can explore whatever questions you have, like,
Okay, give me an example.
how does the angle of a ramp affect the speed of an object rolling down it?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or how does the weight of an object affect its swing on a pendulum?
Cool, so there are endless possibilities.
There really are. The main thing is to just be curious and start exploring.
I love that this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of open educational resources
You too.
and how they can make learning more accessible and engaging for everyone.
It's inspiring to see how this workshop in Singapore brought all these ideas together.
And we hope that our listeners are feeling inspired too,
Yes.
to go out and explore the world of physics using these amazing free tools.
You never know what you might discover.
That's right. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into open educational resources and physics education.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We encourage you to check out the links in the show notes and let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep exploring.